recapping Tuesday night's major primaries across the country, including particularly in Texas. Tim Walz and Keith Ellison are on Capitol Hill getting grilled. We've got some of the best highlights from that. And once again, Gavin Newsom takes a little punch in the jaw. All of that and so much more today on 10 Minute Drill.
Everybody get up, get up.
The story of America is the story of an adventure.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
On Tuesday night, there were a series of major primaries across the country, but the ones that perhaps got the most attention are related to the Texas Senate race. First, on the Democrat side, we pour one out for our dearly beloved Jasmine Crockett. I don't have anything in here, but we're going to pour one out for her. Here are some of her greatest hits.
How about this new one they have, their new star, Crockett? How about her?
She's the new star of the Democrat Party, Jasmine Crockett. They're in big trouble.
But you have this woman, Crockett. She's a very low IQ person.
That, as Kendrick Lamar says, they are not like us. He is not like us.
You're not. We done picking cotton.
That it's not just the libtards.
I'm tripping, I'm sliding, I'm riding through the back like what's that on the beat, bro?
My favorite of those was, of course, Jasmine Crockett's famous rendition of Kendrick Lamar's They Not Like Us, which is true for Jasmine because she is in fact not like us in that we are currently still employed. But she wasted no time in calling out election interference.
So long as they know that they can win, even if it means cheating, then they will continue to do it.
Unfortunately, this is what Republicans like to do.
I'll note there as she said that if Republicans were actually trying to rig this at all, it would have been to help Jasmine Crockett win. You might remember that the main reason that she got in this race was Republicans baited her into it by releasing polling showing that she would be competitive. The fact that she lost by over 100,000 votes shows that didn't really bear out, but I think that's more her fault than the polling's fault. But that leaves James Talarico as the Democrat nominee. We're going to get to him at the end of this program because I believe that if Republicans created a perfect Democrat candidate saying nonsensical things to run against, it would look a lot like James Talarico. But on the Republican side, we are moving to a runoff where incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn will face Ken Paxton, the current Attorney General of Texas. There's a lot going on in that race, and it's moving very quickly. Yesterday, President Trump posted this on Truth Social. The Republican primary race for the United States Senate in the great state of Texas, a state I love and won 3 times in record numbers, cannot, for the good of the party and for our country itself, be allowed to go on any longer. I will be making my endorsement soon and will be asking the candidate I don't endorse to immediately drop out of the race. Is that fair? We must win in November. Thank you for attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. My prediction is that an endorsement for John Cornyn is coming, and there's a few reasons why. One, John Cornyn overperformed the polls. A lot of polling throughout this race had showed Ken Paxton far ahead. In the end, it was actually a very close race. The second piece of this is while there are a lot of things Ken Paxton did for the conservative movement, he was the face of a lot of really important lawsuits and litigation. He's done very valuable things to move the ball forward. He has very unique vulnerabilities that Democrats would heavily use against him, forcing Republicans to end up spending a lot of money in the state they would much rather spend in states like Georgia, Michigan, and others where they have a chance to actually go on offense. I believe President Trump's advisors are telling him the smartest path for Republicans to take that state off the map from Democrats completely is to endorse John Cornyn and move forward with a unified ticket. On Iran, one of the most valuable sources on what's led up to this point has been reporting from Axios, and they have a new story yesterday highlighting a call between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that set all of this rolling with some incredibly unique, valuable color. Exclusive, the Trump-Netanyahu call that changed the Middle East. Last Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called President Trump with a stunning tip. Iran's supreme leader and his top advisors were all set to meet at one location in Tehran on Saturday morning. What's valuable about this piece is President Trump and the Israeli team had been talking for months now about Iran and about the potential of taking out their leadership after seeing so much bad behavior, the consistent threats, and of course, the 47 years of violent attacks from Iran against American troops, American personnel, and of course, Israel. So this discussion had been going on for a long time, but there were essentially 2 tracks to this that this Axios piece details. The first being President Trump and his team planning out the long case they would like to make to the American people for this strike. They would like to have been able to spend a lot of time making the case that this is necessary and needed. The case that they're making now. The problem is they were presented with the opportunity of having the Ayatollah and his top leadership team in the same room at the same time with the opportunity to take everybody out all at once. So the value proposition there, what they had to consider was, do they miss that opportunity, take that month to build up the case, but then have a much more difficult time individually targeting each of these leadership members, or do they strike while the opportunity is there to take all these people out at once and simplify the attack that is needed? And they chose the second. Now they are making that case, but I think this Axios intelligence or Axios reporting is incredibly valuable in helping us understand how President Trump got to this decision. Despite all the other crazy things going on in the media, the story of the Minnesota Somali fraud scandal, the $9 billion plus taken from American taxpayers, has not fallen off the radar. House Republicans hosted Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison, and there were a lot of fireworks. First, we look at Tim Walz.
Do you think it's racist or Islamophobic to highlight and try to stop fraud?
It is not, and I certainly
It's not, but that was the message your administration was sending to multiple whistleblowers.
Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
Well, Chairman, we did tell you. And Feeding Our Future grew because of the pandemic. And
I didn't ask that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
And a key point that Republicans in this committee wanted to focus on with Keith Ellison was his role in this massive fraud scheme. The meeting that was recorded of him telling fraudsters that he was going to support their efforts, both by ensuring that government money was flowing into their fraud scheme, but also that the investigations into them were shut down.
There's a 54-minute audio tape of your meeting with these criminals in December of 2021. And during your meeting, they complained to you about increased scrutiny of their nonprofits, and you told them, quote, "Of course I'm here to help," end quote.
Just an important reminder that this really hasn't fallen off the map. One key part of President Trump's State of the Union was the role J.D. Vance is going to play in fighting fraud around the country and helping root it out, make an example of these things, and make sure that our tax dollars are much better spent. And if there are criminals out there, like Keith Ellison, they are held accountable. One thing we talked about yesterday was Gavin Newsom and Democrats trying to find an opportunity to blame shift the high energy costs that American people have been feeling to Republicans because of President Trump's decision to bomb Iran. It's absurd because, as we know, Democrats have used every bit of power they've had in the last several years to drive up energy costs, to force people into electric vehicles using wind and solar and all sorts of green boondoggles. But one way that Democrats have done this, Democrats have attacked energy to try and raise up costs, is through lawsuits. We've talked about that extensively here on 10 Minute Drill, where states and cities have tried to sue energy companies for bad weather events, saying that they caused climate change. Well, a lawmaker in Louisiana has a novel idea to try and take that play from the left off the board. Louisiana Republican seeks to shield oil industry from climate lawsuits. Louisiana Representative Brett Gaiman has filed a bill that would limit liability for emissions of greenhouse gases and protect energy producers and related industries. Any state-level legal claims related to greenhouse gas emissions, the proposed legislation said, would be preempted by federal law. One major reason for this is when these activist groups have the ability to essentially shut down major energy companies, there are massive national security concerns because of our reliance on energy to function and how it impacts relationships with other countries around the world. So there's a lot of reasons for taking this particular card away from the activist groups, many of which are funded and led by China and the Chinese Communist Party, out of play. Checking back in on Gavin Newsom's book tour, a lot of the media hits that he's had have been very sort of softball. We love you. You have great hair. You're so handsome. But he ran into a bit of a buzzsaw with my friend, Mark Halperin.
I say all the time, I don't think you're going to run. I think you may get in and then get out. But I think this because so many people dislike you, it's just true. Maybe the book will take the edge off of that.
Yikes. That is brutally honest, but it doesn't stop there.
Because you're going to get scrutiny for stuff you've never gotten scrutiny before. That's what happens if you run.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
I just think my gut says you're not going to run in the end.
The irony with Gavin Newsom is the scrutiny that he's going to face for things. It covers the nasty, scandalous things like breaking up his best friend's marriage by having an affair with his wife. It covers all sorts of sticky personal things, but it also covers the fact that Gavin Newsom's own record is one of the most politically toxic things we've seen in politics in recent decades, and Mark Halperin gets that. So, as this book tour continues, look to see who is holding him a little bit accountable and pressing him up for things, and who's out there just to have a nice time with Gav. For our You Can't Make It Up segment today, we began this program telling you about the Texas primaries and the fact that Democrats have selected James Talarico to be their nominee. I have previously described him as sort of your creepy youth pastor you didn't invite to the barbecue, the sort of Pete Buttigieg of Beto O'Rourke's, a guy who Democrats and the media might love, but can't really pick it up on the ground. And part of the reason that I believe Republicans are going to have a fun time in this campaign is this dude has said a lot of very crazy things. We bring you today Far Left Buzzword Bingo with James Talarico. First, this.
Modern science obviously recognizes that there are many more than 2 biological sexes. In fact, there are 6.
Now, first consider that Talarico is wearing a mask there, and he's talking about 6 biological sexes. That, my friends, is hot button. But one thing that Talarico does that Pete Buttigieg often does is uses the Bible to attack conservative ideas like this.
But I say all this in context of abortion because before God comes over Mary and we have the incarnation, God asks for Mary's consent.
But to take it one step further, he also said this.
God is non-binary.
But it's not just quirky manipulating religious themes. He also said this about immigration.
Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front.
But my favorite of all, the one that really wraps up the bingo game, is this.
Before we go further, I want to acknowledge that our trans community needs abortion care too.
Our trans community needs abortion care. Nobody knows what that means. You could sit down with the furthest left person that you know and they will say, that is crazy. And that is just the beginning. The ads write themselves. We can't wait to see it. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on 10 Minute Drill. Please like, subscribe, leave a review. Thank you for joining us all week long. Have a great day.